Hello and welcome to a brand new challenge video. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I like to do challenge runs that are a little bit different, such as gift Pokemon videos for example. Well, today is something a bit more different than that, and as writing this script, never done before on YouTube. Today we find out, can you beat Pokemon Crystal using only Game Corner prize Pokemon? In a handful of Pokemon games, you can buy Pokemon from the Game Corner with coins that you earn through playing the slot machines. I chose Crystal because it has not one but two Game Corners, one in Goldenrod City and one in Celadon City in the Kanto region. This means that we can actually get a full team by the time we beat the game. As always, there's a few rules. I can only use Pokemon I receive in the Game Corner, no other Pokemon may be used. Except for HM users of course. I don't get my first Pokemon until Goldenrod City, so I'm only going to use my starter until that point. No items in battle. I can catch HM slaves with Pokeballs if needed, and I'm allowed to use items outside of battle. Also, no held items are going to be allowed in this run either. And to add a little bit more challenge into this run, I'll be setting the battle style to set, so I can't switch out to gain an advantage. Alright, with the rules out the way, let's get this challenge started. I start the game and pick the male character, and call him Okabe. This one is really easy, but comment down below if you get the reference. I name our rival Zwigo, because he's my mortal enemy. I mean, good friend. Go subscribe to him. Not that it really matters, but I chose Cyndaquil as my starter and speed through the first two gyms. I don't think that missing these gyms will make the challenge that much easier, it's not like the first two gyms are particularly difficult anyway. We arrive in Goldenrod City and head straight to the Game Corner. I can only afford 500 coins at the moment, so I spend some time gambling until I have enough coins to buy my first two Pokemon, Aber and Cubone. These two will be my most reliable team members for a long time. We do have one more Pokemon available to us at the Game Corner, but I don't have the coins for it just yet, and I don't really fancy wasting time at the slot machines until I have enough. Remember guys, when the fun stops, stop. I deposit my starter once and for all and train up my new team members. While doing so, Aber evolves into Kadabra and learns Confusion, so it can actually attack now. It's now time to face the first gym leader of this challenge, Normal type gym leader Whitney. And we lost to her Miltank. Did you really expect anything less? I grind up a few more levels and teach my team a couple of new moves and try again. This time things go much smoother. Clefairy is out first. I send out Cubone and hit with a Bone Club. We start off this run the right way with a lucky critical hit, which brings Clefairy all the way down to red health. Clefairy channels her inner Mah-Dry-Bread and goes for Metronome, getting the move Return, which hardly does anything. I finish off the Clefairy with a Headbutt, and next up is the dreaded Miltank. It outspeeds me but decides to go for a rollout for tiny damage as I lower its attack with Growl. We get hit with another weak rollout as I go for Dig to stop the rollout chain. We hit with a Dig but it really doesn't do much damage. Next turn Miltank goes for Stomp, which doesn't do too much as I hit another Dig. A couple of digs later and I decide I should probably switch into Kadabra, who takes a rollout easily. I outspeed and hit with a Psybeam, which finishes off Miltank, winning us the badge. We arrive in Ecruteak City and pay a visit to the Burn Tower, where Zwigo challenges us to a battle. He leads off with a Haunter, so I send out Kadabra. I outspeed and one-hit KO with a Psybeam. Next out is his starter Croconaw. We outspeed and hit with a Psybeam, which does decent damage as we get hit back with a super effective Bite. We take the hit relatively easily and hit back with another Psybeam. We must have just got a good damage roll because it's enough to knock it out. Next out is Magnemite, so I swap into Cubone and get hit with the Sonic Boom. I outspeed and one-hit KO with a super effective Dig. Zwigo's last Pokemon is a Zubat. I try to hit a Headbutt but we get hit with a Confuse Ray and we hit ourselves in Confusion. I swap back into Kadabra and get hit with a Bite, but we take the hit and one-hit KO with a Psybeam. We beat Zwigo and now it's time for the fourth gym leader, Morty, the Ghost type user. This gym normally causes me some problems, but this time it was a complete sweep. Kadabra outspeeds and one-hit KOs everything on his team, even Gengar goes down in one hit, so we get the badge and continue on our journey. Now we've beaten the gym and earned a bit more money, I can finally buy enough coins to buy our third Pokemon, Wobbuffet. Anyone who's seen my Emerald Gift Pokemon video will know that Wobbuffet can actually be really useful when used the right way, so I'm hoping that we can have the same success this time. We make our way to Olivine City and climb the lighthouse where we find Jasmine. She asks us to go to Cyanwood City and get some medicine for Amphi, so that's our next objective. Before that though, I backtrack to Goldenrod City and buy the TMs for the Elemental Punches and teach all three of them to Kadabra. We cross the ocean and arrive in Cyanwood. On the way, Cubone evolves into Marowak. Its stats are a lot better than Cubone's, so this should be a really good addition to the team. We get the secret potion and challenge the 5th gym leader, fighting type user Chuck. I know I could probably sweep both his Pokemon with Kadabra, but I decide to lead out with our new Wobbuffet. He leads off with a Primeape and goes for Karate Chop. We take the hit easily though and hit back with a counter for good damage, but not enough to KO. Primeape goes for another Karate Chop and we easily take the hit, and one more counter finishes it off. Chuck's last Pokemon is Poliwrath. I'm expecting a Surf, so I go for Mirror Coat, but instead he decides to use Hypnosis, which puts us to sleep. Unfortunately, we get taken out before we can wake up, so I swap into Kadabra and hit with a Psybeam. It does huge damage as he hits back with a Surf, but it only does about half, so one more Psybeam is enough to take the win. We get given the badge and the TM for Dynamic Punch. It's not the most accurate move with only 50% accuracy, but it's got a good base power and always confuses the opponent. It could be useful, so I teach it to Marowak. We return to Olivine and give Jasmine the secret potion. She returns to the gym and we can now challenge her. She leads off with a Magnemite, so I send out Marowak. I go for Boomerang, which is easily enough to one-hit KO. Next up is her ace, Steelix. I go for another Boomerang, but we miss, as Steelix hits us with an Iron Tail, which does about half. We go for another Boomerang, which does hit this time, but due to Steelix's massive defense, it hardly does anything. We get hit with another Iron Tail and it's enough to take us out, so I decide to send out Wobbuffet. I go for counter as Steelix hits us with an Iron Tail. We manage to take the hit and counter is enough to feint Steelix. Jasmine's final Pokemon is another Magnemite. I go for Mirror Coat in the hopes of surviving a Thunderbolt, but unfortunately we don't take the hit. So I swap into Kadabra and hit with a super effective Fire Punch, which is enough to one-hit KO, winning us the 6th gym badge. We deal with Team Rocket in their secret hideout, but they're really easy, so let's just face the 7th gym leader, Ice, the price type user. Team Rocket were really easy once again, so it's time to face the 7th gym leader, Ice type user Price. He leads off with Seal, so I start with Kadabra. I outspeed and hit with a Thunder Punch, which is enough to knock it out. Next up is Dugong, so I go for another Thunder Punch. It does more than half and we get a Paralysis. He hits back with an Aurora Beam and gets a critical hit, but it still does less than half. One more Thunder Punch is enough to take it out, and Price sends out his last Pokemon, Piloswine. I outspeed and hit with a Fire Punch. It does huge damage, leaving it on red health. He hits back with a Blizzard and we live with just 4 health. Unsurprisingly, he uses a Hyper Potion, so we hit another Fire Punch. It lives on red health again, so one more is easily enough to finish it off, winning us the badge. There's some more Team Rocket shenanigans to deal with, and as always, they're not worth yours or my time. However, we do get challenged by Zwigo once again. He leads off with a Golbat. I send out Wobbuffet and try and take it out with a mixture of Counter and Mirror Coat, but we don't really get very far before Wobbuffet goes down. I swap into Kadabra and finish it off with the Psybeam. Next up is Sneasel, so I go for Fire Punch. Thanks to Sneasel's lack of defenses, Fire Punch takes it out from full health. Next up is his fully evolved starter for Alligator. I outspeed and hit with the Thunder Punch, which does a good amount of damage. He hits back with a Bite. It doesn't do too much though, and we take out the Feraligatr with one more Thunder Punch. Next up is Magnemite, but it goes down in one Fire Punch. We grow to level 38 though and learn the move Psychic. We obviously want this move, so I replace Psybeam. Zwigo's last Pokemon is Haunter, so we outspeed and put our new move to good use. Needless to say, it takes it out in one hit and we win the battle. We take care of Team Rocket once and for all and move on to the final gym. Dragon type gym leader, Claire. This gym is actually pretty easy. She starts off with the first of her 3 Dragonair. I start with Kadabra and outspeed, hitting a super effective Ice Punch, taking it out from full health. The second one suffers the same fate, and so does the third, so all that's left is her ace, Kingdra. I outspeed and go for Psychic. It does over half, but Kingdra decides to go for Smokescreen. We don't miss and one more Psychic finishes off Kingdra. Wow, these gyms have been really easy this run for some reason. Kadabra is definitely overpowered. So now we've got our 8 badges, let's take on the Elite Four. But of course, before we can do that, we have to face Zwigo one more time. When will you learn, Zwigo? You're always going to lose to me. Sneasel's up first, so I send out Kadabra and go for a Fire Punch. Once again, Sneasel's defenses are just not good at all, so one Fire Punch is all it takes. Next up is Golbat, so I outspeed and hit with a super effective Psychic, which is also a one-hit KO. Next up is Magneton. I could switch into Marowak here, but I decide to stay in and go for Fire Punch, which is actually also a one-hit KO. Next up is Haunter, and you guessed it, we outspeed and one-hit KO. Kadabra really is OP. Next up is his own Kadabra, so I decide to let someone else have a turn. I swap into Marowak as he goes for a Future Sight. I go for Boomerang as he decides to go for Future Sight again for some reason. Boomerang hits and it's enough to take it out. It's down to Zwiggo's last Pokemon, his starter for Alligator. I decide to swap into Wobbuffet as he hits us with a Water Gun. Why does he still have Water Gun? It doesn't do a lot of damage, but we do get hit with the Future Sight for a small amount. I'm expecting a bite, so I go for Mirror Coat, but instead he goes for Slash, which is a physical move, so Mirror Coat fails. I go for Counter this turn, and luckily he does go for another Slash, so we hit back with Counter and it does over half. I go for Counter again, and thankfully he goes for another Slash, so one more Counter is enough to win us the fight. I do a little bit of training and teach a couple of moves to my Pokemon, and we're finally ready to take on the Pokemon League. Before that though, here's a look at our team. We have Marowak with the moves Earthquake, Dynamic Punch, Boomerang and Strength, Kadabra with the moves Psychic, Fire Punch, Ice Punch and Thunder Punch, and Wobbuffet with the moves Counter, Mirror Coat, Safeguard and Destiny Bond. Alright, let's see if we can win. Our first opponent is Will, who uses Psychic types. He starts off with the Xatu, so I send out Kadabra. I outspeed and one-hit KO with the Thunder Punch. Next up is his second and slightly more powerful Xatu. Once again I outspeed and hit with a Thunder Punch, but Xatu lives on a sliver of health and hits back with a Confuse Ray. Will uses a Max Potion, fully healing Xatu as I hit through Confusion and land another Thunder Punch, which once again leaves it on red health. I go for Fire Punch to finish it off, and luckily we don't hit ourselves again, so Xatu goes down. Next up is Jinx. Once again I don't hit myself with Confusion and we hit a Fire Punch, which brings it down to red health. Jinx tries to put us to sleep with Lovely Kiss, but it fails, so we're able to knock it out next turn with another Fire Punch. Next up is Exeggutor. I go for Ice Punch, which he just barely survives, but we get the freeze. He's unable to move, so one more is enough to finish it off. Will's final Pokemon is Slowbro. I hit with a super effective Thunder Punch, which isn't enough to one-hit KO, as he goes for Amnesia. That's not going to save him from one more Thunder Punch, so we win the battle, without even taking a single point of damage. Next up is Poison Master Koga. He leads off with an Ariados. It would be easy to stick with Kadabra, so I decide to let someone else take the spotlight for once. I send out Marowak and go for Earthquake. It does well over half, but Ariados retaliates with a super effective Giga Drain. It doesn't do very much damage though, and even with him healing some HP, one more Earthquake is enough to KO. Next up is Venomoth. I go for Earthquake, but we get outsped and hit with the Toxic. Earthquake does a good amount of damage, bringing it down below half. Venomoth goes for Supersonic, but it misses, so we're able to finish it off with a Boomerang. Next up is Fortress. I decide that now's the time to swap into Kadabra. He wastes a turn going for Protect, so we outspeed and one-hit KO with a 4x super effective Fire Punch. Next out is Crobat. Much to my surprise, we're actually faster than it, and one Psychic is enough to KO. Koga's final Pokemon is Muck, but one more Psychic is all it takes to win us the battle. The third member of the Elite Four is Bruno, who uses fighting types. We have Kadabra, so you already know how this is going to go. His Hitmontop gets one shot by Psychic, and his Onix faints to one Ice Punch. Hitmonlee gets one shot by Psychic, as does Hitmonchan after hitting us with a weak Muck Punch. His last Pokemon is Machamp, and normally this thing would be one of the more challenging Pokemon to fight. But not when you have a Kadabra apparently, as one Psychic takes it out. Talk about a one-shot sweep. The final member of the Elite Four is Dark-type user Karen. She starts off with an Umbreon. I lead with Marowak and go for Earthquake. She outspeeds me though and lowers our accuracy with the Sand Attack. Earthquake still hits though and it does about a third. Umbreon goes for another Sand Attack as we go for Dynamic Punch. Despite it only being 50 accuracy and having been hit with Sand Attack twice, we still manage to hit. It does a lot of damage and confuses it, but she lives on red health. Umbreon confuses us with a Confuse Ray, but we're still able to hit and finish it off with a Strength. Next up is Vileplume, so I swap into Kadabra. Unfortunately though, we get hit with a Stun Spore which paralyzes us. We're now slower than it, so we get hit with a Petal Dance for decent damage. We hit back with a Psychic though, which is enough to take it out from full health. Next up is Murkrow, so I decide to swap back into Marowak. We get hit with a critical hit Feint Attack, which does about half, and next turn we get outsped and hit with another one. But it's not a critical hit this time, so we survive with health to spare and hit back with a Strength, which does just under half. I decide to try my luck with Dynamic Punch as we're hit with another Feint Attack. We survive with just 8 HP, and luckily our dynamic punch hits, which is enough to knock out the Murkrow. Next up is Gengar. I'm sure we're going to faint this turn, but I decide to go for Earthquake anyway, just in case. Gengar goes for Lick, and we actually survive.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Earthquake hits and it's a one-hit KO on the Gengar. Karen's final Pokemon is Houndoom. I decide to try an Earthquake, but we easily get outsped and finished off by Pursuit. I swap into Wobbuffet and it's time for the cheapest trick in the book, the good old Destiny Bond. It's worth noting that I wouldn't be able to use Mirror Coat here as it doesn't actually affect Dark types. We actually survive the first crunch, but a second Destiny Bond seals our fate and we beat the final member of the Elite Four. It's time for the last fight of the main game, the champion, Lance. His first Pokemon is Gyarados, so I start with Kadabra and one-hit KO with a quad effective Thunder Punch. Next out is one of his 3 Dragonite. I outspeed and hit with an Ice Punch, which is also enough to KO from full health. His second Dragonite is out next, and it goes down the same way the first one did. Next up is Aerodactyl. I outspeed and hit with a Psychic. It does well over half as he hits back with a Wing Attack, which does a good amount. One more Thunder Punch finishes it off. Next up is Charizard, so I go for another Thunder Punch and it hits hard, leaving Charizard on red health. He hits back with a Flamethrower though and Kadabra finally goes down, which is a problem because I could really use Ice Punch for his final Pokemon. I swap into Marowak. We get outsped and hit with a Flamethrower, but we're able to survive it and finish off Charizard with a Strength. Lance's final Pokemon is his strongest Dragonite. I go for Strength again, but we get outsped and taken out by an Outrage. He's now locked into using that move though, and our last Pokemon is Wobbuffet. Dragon moves are special in Generation 2, so I go for Mirror Coat. We're hit with a powerful Outrage, but we live with health to spare, and hit back with Mirror Coat, which is enough to take it out from full health. We beat the champion, and beat Pokemon Crystal using only Game Corner prize Pokemon. Except, there's more. Not only do we have 8 gyms and a secret final boss to fight, but we can actually get ourselves a full team now. If we travel to Celadon City and pay a visit to the Game Corner there, you'll see there's 3 more Pokemon just waiting to be purchased. I buy as many coins as I can, and eventually I have enough to buy our last 3 Pokemon, Porygon, Pikachu, and Larvitar. These are actually decent Pokemon, so they'll definitely come in handy for the rest of the game. I beat all the gym leaders in Kanto, who honestly were really easy, and grind up my team. While doing this, I get a Thunderstone to evolve Pikachu into Raichu, and evolve Larvitar all the way to a Tyranitar. My original 3 Pokemon are basically the same, so here's a look at our new members. We have Porygon with the moves Tri-Attack, Icy Wind, Recover, and Psychic, Raichu with the moves Thunderbolt, Quick Attack, Toxic, and Iron Tail, and Tyranitar with the moves Rock Slide, Screech, Thrash, and Crunch. We arrive at the top of Mount Silver and face the final battle of this run, Red. We're roughly 20 levels or so lower than his Pokemon, but I feel confident in this team. Red starts off with Pikachu, so I lead off with Marowak. He outspeeds and hits with a Charm, lowering our attack as I hit a super effective Earthquake. But thanks to the Charm though, Pikachu survives and goes for a Quick Attack, which does hardly anything, so one more Earthquake takes it down. Next up is Venusaur, so I decide to swap into Wobbuffet. I thought this was a genius move as he begins to charge Solar Beam, but unfortunately not even Wobbuffet can survive that. I swap into Kadabra, who's still our strongest Pokemon, and go for Psychic. It does a lot of damage, but Venusaur survives and begins charging another Solar Beam, but that's fine because we're able to finish it off before it can even hit us. Next up is Espeon. I'm expecting a Psychic, so I swap into Tyranitar, who's part Dark type, but Espeon decides instead to go for Reflect. That's not too big of a deal though, as Dark type moves are special in Generation 2, so I go for Crunch as we get outsped and hit with a Mud Slap. It does lower our accuracy, but doesn't do much damage. Crunch still hits though and does a good amount of damage. We're hit with another Mud Slap, which makes our Crunch miss. We're hit with another one, but this time we don't miss and finish off the Espeon with one more Crunch. Next up is Blastoise. I need a safe switch into Raichu for this one, and unfortunately Porygon is definitely the weakest link of the team, so I send it out to take a Surf. We actually survive with just 9 health as the Reflect wears off. However, Blastoise is faster than Porygon, so we go down before we can do anything. I can now safely switch into Raichu though, and we outspeed and hit with a Thunderbolt, which does about half. We're hit with a Surf, but we actually manage to survive. I go for Thunderbolt one more time and take out the Blastoise. Next up is Snorlax, probably the most difficult Pokemon to deal with on his team. I switch into Marowak, who gets hit with a powerful Body Slam. We're able to take the hit though, so I decide to try my luck with Dynamic Punch. Thankfully we hit, and it does a decent amount of damage and confuses him. Not only that, but he hits himself in confusion. I go for Earthquake this time, which brings it down to about half. Snorlax actually hits himself in confusion for a second time. I can't risk missing a Dynamic Punch, so I go for another Earthquake, which brings it to red health. And Snorlax hits itself in confusion for a third time, knocking itself out. I got insanely lucky there. Red's final Pokemon is Charizard. I stay in, but we get outsped and KO'd by a Flamethrower. I swap back into Tyranitar as we have a 4-time super effective Rock Slide. We get outsped and hit with another Flamethrower, but we take the hit no problem and fire back with a Rock Slide, which is enough to feint Charizard from full health. We beat Red and beat Pokémon Crystal using only Game Corner prize Pokemon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought it was something a little bit different that I'd not seen done before, and I hope it was as interesting to watch as it was for me to make. This wasn't the most difficult run I've ever done, but I still really enjoyed doing it. Kadabra turned out to be the MVP of the team from the moment it evolved from Abra, and Wobbuffet was, well, Wobbuffet. If you saw my Emerald Gift Pokemon video, it played a very similar role there. If you want to see me take on this challenge in a different game, let me know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to leave any challenge ideas in the comments too. If I pick your idea, I'll give you a shout out in the video. As always, please consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more challenge videos. I've got a new gift Pokemon challenge coming up really soon, so you will not want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.